Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started shortly. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started very shortly. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this We Got This WA webinar series. My name is Sarah Childs, and I am very excited to be able to moderate this panel today. We are going to be using video today, so I will start my video, and our two panelists will also be able to join us via video today as we focus on employee engagement in a remote work world right now. Thank you very much to the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce for putting this webinar on. The Chamber serves 2,600 members, most of which are small businesses. And this webinar series is really focused on helping small businesses navigate this time. This is unprecedented, and really tapping into the expertise and the resources that the Chamber has available and making those available to our members. Thank you also to our sponsor, Advanced Professionals Insurance and Benefit Solution, and to Business Health Trust, which is the health insurance platform that the Chamber sponsors. So at this time, I'd love to welcome our two panelists to turn their videos on as well as I go through some of the webinar logistics. So please use the Q&A panel during this webinar if you have questions for our speakers. We will do our best to answer questions as we go. And if we're not able to reach all of the questions during this time, we will follow up offline. If you have questions about connection or issues connecting during the webinar, please use the chat box. We will also be recording this webinar, and it will be available on the event page at the Seattle Metro Chamber tomorrow. So as the coronavirus pandemic continues to change the way we do business, employers, we know, are looking for ways to keep their staff engaged during this difficult time. A big part of that really is the trust, transparency, and empowerment. Today, we'll discuss creative tactics that foster healthy and effective communication and camaraderie to keep employees engaged, productive, and healthy. This webinar will really focus on providing tools, tips, and helpful resources for employers to be able to successfully manage remote workers during this global pandemic. With that, I'd love to introduce Alicia Teal and Jane Bilby. Hi, guys. Nice to see you.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you.
And we're going to start off with a polling question to see who else is on the webinar today. So our first polling question is, what is your role within your organization? Owner, CEO, or leader of the organization, a people manager or team leader, a human resources professional, office manager or administrator, or other employee. We'll give you a few minutes so that we can, also see who's on the call that we can be tailoring our message to and really equip you during this time. Great, and we'll close that out right now. And our second polling question is, what areas for opportunity exist to increase or enhance engagement for your organization? Social connection opportunities, organizational health and finance, health and well-being, or other. Great, thank you all for those that participated. We will close this second poll out. All right, so let's look at what opportunities folks are thinking they have in their organizations. It looks like a vast majority of folks, social connection opportunities, as well as the health and well-being. Well, that's great. I think both Jane and Alicia are going to be able to really help with some tangible tools during this next 45 minutes. So hopefully everyone will get a few tips and tricks along the way. So thank you so much for your participation. So Jane and Alicia, welcome. Thank you again. I would love for you guys to both just start by telling us who you are, your roles in the organization. So Jane, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to be using video for the first time. So we're all trying this out and hope that that enhances the experience. My name is Jane Bilby, and I am the Senior Vice President of Operations at the Seattle Metro Chamber. So the Seattle Chamber has about 30 employees that support the Chamber directly, and then we support 6 other organizations through our shared services. So we represent about 7 organizations and just under 60 employees. And my role is to keep all of that moving forward in all of those organizations, engaging their teams and managing all of their operational pieces.
Great. Alicia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alicia Teal. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Chamber. So in that role, I lead our Marketing and Communications Department, which oversees the external communications, and then we also advise on the internal communication. So I help our CEO and other leadership think about how we are talking about decisions to the rest of the team.
I have to say, I have the pleasure of knowing both of you personally, and this is a great team, kind of the HR engagement and pulse on the people of the organization, and then the communications. It really, I think, is going to make for some really great tips for folks. So Jane, I'd love to start with you. So why does engagement matter in general, but especially during this time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think most people who are team leaders or leaders of organizations have heard the stats of more engaged employees have higher productivity, they stay for longer, they lower a lot of your costs in terms of turnover and retention and recruitment. That's even more important right now, where people are isolated within their homes, they're not getting to see each other every day. And we're having to leverage engagement, not just from a productivity standpoint, but from a health and well-being standpoint, and helping people not respond to the crisis with one of 2 ways, fear and helplessness, but rather driving them to that engagement and kind of self-actualization of, I can help the organization, and my engagement is actually going to help the organization come through this, rather than I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know, what the day holds for me, or the kind of my role holds for me. And so it's really about bringing out that best in people by showing that you care. And that's going to help your organization come through this crisis. Even if you do have to make cuts, or your organization looks different, the employees are going to be with you through that and able to help you steward the organization to be stronger on the other side. So, and it's also just from a taking care of our people standpoint, engagement is so important to help people manage through this, not just employees of your organization, but as people who have other concerns, who are afraid of this kind of unprecedented time in general. And so it's about caring for people and also as your employees. And so that's exacerbated now more than ever. Sorry, that's for me to keep going. So on the next slide, we have, I think, a lot of people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so that has been adjusted to be for hierarchy of engagement. So this is something that employers can think about. So employees aren't going to be able to move towards that self-actualization without those bottom layers of the pyramid. And that is where Alicia will also talk about kind of the communications pieces and how you can address some of these bottom layer concerns and start moving into the higher levels of engagement, and starting to help people feel that camaraderie, that importance, and that self-actualization that's going to help them manage themselves and their work through this process. I think that this is, as unprecedented and for all the challenges that this time presents, it's also a really exciting opportunity for leaders to really step up and to lean into compassion and empathy for their employees, and to be really able to set the work aside and really check in with their people and check in and use those moments to connect and really care about employees for for who they are as people, because the productivity will come on the other end of that. If you check in and make space and try to keep as much normalcy. For example, my team, when we were in the office, had a weekly standing meeting. We have not altered that. We still have that same meeting. I still run it. We start with, how was your weekend? What was, a highlight? Everyone start with a highlight from the weekend. It's changed a little bit. It's kind of, okay, what's been your highlight around your house? Or, it's, so we kind of lean into the fact that it's an odd time, but that normalcy and cadence is the same. And people know that we're going to have our weekly check-in. It provides them that stability in a time where I can't always provide stability in other areas of my leadership to them. And so we take time to then, if I have a task that I'm going to give to one of my team members, I say, hey, do you have a moment for a call? And I call them and I see them face to face, and we start with, how are you doing? How's your family? I know you have a kiddo. Or how's your husband, who I know has struggled with these other, health concerns. And I started off with, how are you, my employee? Not, okay, I have a task, I'm just going to send an email and say, I need you to do this. Because then it's like, oh, my manager actually cares. We can actually find if there are beginning to be concerns, right? An employee was like, well, actually, I'm really struggling with this or that. And you can address that before it becomes an issue with productivity. And you can address it before it becomes a concern for them. And then they're spinning and it's taking more triage to solve the problem. So really leaning into trust and compassion and reaching out to your employees to drive that, to make sure that they feel cared for. Because I've been reading a lot of articles about companies who are instituting, kind of watchdog softwares or email productivity, or, you've only sent this many emails. My IT guy even emailed and was like, do you want to see the log of how many times people are logging into the VPN? And it's, no, I don't, right? Because that to me is information that an employee could be adding so much value without logging into the VPN. And it's my responsibility as the people manager to be monitoring that and trusting that they're doing their jobs. And I think it's another question to address performance, and if there are questions on that, I think it's worth, this is not the time to ignore performance concerns, but not to assume that there are going to be performance concerns, and kind of acting as usual and having the same expectations. And on the next slide, there is some ideas of what the chamber, so practices. So again, reinforce normalcy and be the first one to flex trust. So that goes into what I was saying of assume that your employees are going to be producing and address the concern if it comes up, rather than building in all of these things to assume that they're not going to be getting their jobs done. The chamber has come up with a lot of ideas on how to, yes, thank you, create dedicated spaces for non-work related check-ins. Again, I like to use new projects as the opportunity also to check in on top of just our regularly scheduled coffee meetings and work and team meetings. And the chamber also recognized that there was a big need for other engagement opportunities that weren't happening, but typically happen in the office. In the staff lounge, we have an open workspace, so when people see each other. So we have come up with some creative ideas on the next slide on what we have done. The ideas on
can I interrupt you for a second? I have to just give Jane, so these are some awesome ideas. Being part of the chamber team, the engagement amongst the team is incredible. So as she's going through some of these ideas, some might work for your organization, some might not. But as you heard Jane say, just establishing that normalcy. A lot of these things are things we already did as a team, and now we're taking them virtually. So really leaning into being physically distant, but not socially distant, and really having that social connectivity, because we know that we want face-to-face, we want that engagement with each other, both within the professional world and beyond. So back to some of your examples, Jane.
Great, and I actually broke them out to speak to your point, Sarah, about things we were doing already that we moved online and things that we added in, because I've been on a couple of webinars and it's talked about, these are all the things that you should already be doing. And I always leave feeling like, oh my gosh, I have all these new things I need to create, and it's a little overwhelming. And so one thing so virtual staff meetings, so both on the team level and the entire team. We had our entire team meeting. It was pretty great to see about 30 people on the screen. We got a fun image of everyone on there. We've done an online lunch and learn where we just all watched a recorded Fidelity investment training and tried to keep that. We do that quarterly in the office, and we just continued our cadence on that. We have an office poll that we do daily or every couple of days, and one of our staff members took that on and has been sending that out and sending out the results, which has been really fun. We also have a staff recognition program that is typically done on sheets of paper, and staff can turn them in for gift cards. And we found a way to turn that electronic as well. So we're continuing that recognition program, and it took small adjustments to what we were already doing, and staff really responded positively because, again, it's that normalcy, it's familiarity, it's the stability of things that they're used to. We also, as Sarah mentioned, built in a few extra things that we don't normally have to do because people are seeing each other day to day. So fika breaks, which is, if you don't know, it's a Scandinavian tradition of getting a beverage and a tasty snack and just checking in. We keep those, we cap them at 10 minutes. So they're quick. Whoever's available to jump on those joins. It's a little touch base and connection point. We do have, some employees, and Alicia's going to speak to this, who have lots going on at home with childcare or other. And we have some employees who are alone, right? And they're having to self-quarantine by themselves. And so building in opportunities to just interface and see other people day to day is something that we don't normally have to think about, but we've built in. We did a spirit week, so we had a different theme each day, and I'm happy to share that out in the materials afterwards. We did Mug Monday and Thankful Thursday and different things, and employees sent in photos, and then we did a collage at the end of each day. We also did a share your workspaces slide, and so employees would share where they work and what and who they're working with. So for me, it's me and my dog, and so I took a photo of my workspace, and then people can kind of get an idea when they are talking to me. They can see my space, and I can kind of make that social connection, and it increases empathy to know, okay, well, that employee has this workspace or this workmate now that's new, and it builds in that compassion and that kind of social piece that you miss if you're just emailing. And then we also set up virtual one-on-one coffee meetings so that employees can connect with people who aren't on their team or who they regularly interact with from a work standpoint. Again, trying to increase connection to increase empathy and resiliency. The thinking being, if employees get to interface with people on a non-work basis, when it comes to coordinating or working together, they're going to have more empathy and more ability to be understanding of each other and loop people in and have better cross collaboration between teams.
Yeah. So, I know that some some employers might have employees who are not working right now too. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking, some of these ideas actually could be also implemented for folks that aren't working, and just to help that sense of community and sense of engagement for when they do come back to the office. An example that I know you led with the team was a happy hour on Friday at 4 o'clock. Bring your own beverage of choice, water, bubbly, alcoholic, whatever kind of policy allows for organizations, and just engage, have a trivia, or even the fika breaks, and being able to have different times throughout the day for people to see each other, and facilitating that as an employer. Zoom is a great tool as well. There's so many great tools out there that folks can be using free to engage their employees. So just wanted to offer kind of that spin of, even when people are not working right now, there might be some opportunities for employers to serve that convener role. So Alicia, I would love to hear from you a little bit on best practices for managing communications, both internally and to member companies. Jane's talked a lot about what we are doing to engage folks, and that's great, but we also have to have that communication piece, right? So, talk to us about some best practices.
Yeah, and so as Jane mentioned, this is a time when folks are feeling a lot of uncertainty, and I think, things seem very unstable. Things are changing a lot, and so this is where internal and external communications, which is something that a lot of us, do have control over, really comes into play. And so some best practices to think about as you're talking to your employees include the first one is be simple and be consistent. And so I think we have learned this kind of as we've gone. So rein in your impulse to add a ton of language. I think you really want to keep it pretty simple so that there's not a lot of room for multiple interpretations. You really just want one interpretation of your email. And you want it to be consistent. You want to be telling different groups of people the same thing. Of course, there's the bonus for you. It's easier to remember, just say one thing. But it's also a best practice that, different folks aren't hearing different things, especially in a time of instability. I think that's when stories and rumors can really take hold. And so you want to be very cautious about that. I think certainly you can share different levels of detail with different folks, but you need to be telling the same story. And then the last piece of consistency is a consistent schedule or rhythm. So at the Chamber, we are working on sending a staff email every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so that way folks know when to expect it. We've also committed that even if there's nothing new to share, that we actually say that. Again, in a time of uncertainty and instability, I think this no news is good news really rings true. So let folks know if nothing is changing, because otherwise they are going to think you're only going to communicate when there's bad news to share.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Not always bad news, right? Just talking to people and
right.
helping them know the story instead of make that story up of what they might not know in this time.
Yes, exactly. And so along with that, anticipate who needs what context. So you might be the CEO, you might be the team leader, and so you're in those decision-making meetings, but a lot of your staff probably aren't, and so they don't know what's going on. And so think about that, especially as many of us are not operating in an office environment where you might bump into someone and get a little bit of the scoop of what's going on. Folks are really not seeing that. So in your brief message, do add some background so that folks can fill in those blanks. Like Sarah said, it is easier when you are providing the details for that story so that there's less room for details to creep in from what they might be reading in the news, what they might be hearing from friends and family. So you can set the tone for that. Next, think about the messenger and think about the fact that you're probably going to need multiple messengers. So I think oftentimes the head of the company or your executive director makes a ton of sense. You want that person taking responsibility for the big decisions, and so they should be sharing out that information. Another advantage is, again, that consistency of the message when it's the same person who talks about things the same way. And then I think also the head of the organization is a great choice when you're really transmitting information. But think also about how you can deputize and help your department supervisors or team leads also be a good internal messenger for you. So at the Chamber, we do this a lot, right? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, as I was listening to you talk, one of the things that popped in my mind was just taking the time as a leader to communicate. I know for myself, a lot of times, things are coming at us fast, and I know the context, as you mentioned, but taking that time really intentionally, I've actually put time on my calendar to kind of pause and be like, okay, I need to connect with these people on these things, because I don't want to, show up to a team check-in, spit things off, and then people are like, whoa, what just happened? So, that was a tip that somebody had given me and has been really helpful over the last week.
Oh, that's great. I love that. And then also being transparent. So I do see a comment in the chat box here about being transparent about your schedule. So that's a great example of, transparency, I think,
Yeah.
especially in this time when, a person cannot look at your desk and know that you're not there because you're in a meeting. It's really incumbent on all of us as leaders to think about how we're letting our staff know when we're available so that, again, they're not filling in the blanks about why you're not responding to their email right away or to their text. And then also in the vein of transparency, you want to be transparent about what you know as well as what you don't know. So back to this theme of uncertainty, it is reassuring to folks to know that you don't know and to know that, here's what you're doing to fill in the gaps. Because otherwise they think that maybe you're withholding information. And so when it's clear, like you don't have that information to give them, it's a pretty different story. And then the final point is being a human. So as Jane mentioned, I think we're all working fast. It's a stressful situation. And at the same time, it's important to acknowledge it's a stressful situation, acknowledge uncertainty, show your care as you're communicating with folks. It doesn't have to be over the top. Make it consistent with kind of who you are in regular times too. But I think take the time to ask how people are doing. Communicate with folks that we are in this together. I think that makes a huge difference. And then think too about how your internal communications reflect the values of you and your company. We're not having, again, that office environment that serves as a reinforcement in regular life. And so your internal communications are a critical form of employee engagement at this time. So use them to communicate what your values are. Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that the way that we show up right now is the way that employees are going to remember coming through this time. They're not going to remember some of the more difficult things. They're going to remember how we respond. And to Krista's point, again, about kind of your daily schedule, something that a lot of teams at the Chamber have implemented is kind of a daily overview. And it's kind of what you're working on and what meetings you have. And it's I get that from every person on my team every day. And so it's an idea. And then I also let my team know at the beginning of the day kind of what my schedule is holding. And it's more transparency than I probably would normally do when everyone's in the office. And it helps me know where they're going to need my support and gives them the insight as to what I'm working on so that they know that I am working on things, even though if it's not blocked off on my calendar. So I think to address that question, if people are kind of worried about what your schedule is or they need you immediately, but you're in the middle of something, just again, leaning into that transparency and saying, hey team, beginning of the day, I have this really big project and it's going to be requiring me to jump in and out of meetings. I may not be as responsive and this is the way, or this is what to expect. And it's getting ahead of that concern for the day, or it's getting ahead of it to address it rather than having to respond late and saying, oh, sorry, I responded late. It was because I was in this other meeting. So it's setting the tone and getting that both from the people that report to you and the people that you report to give them a clear kind of expectation and transparency of what you're doing that day.
So Jane, how do you do that without making people feel like, oh, they want to know what I'm doing every minute of every day and leaning into that trust?
Yeah, I think it's in the way that you word it, right? And so when we first started working, the Chamber started working remotely, I believe it was March 6th. So we've been doing this for a minute. The first day that we were fully remote, I sent a note and I said, hey, I trust you all to continue doing the great work that you always do. That being said, because we're not getting those in-person touch moments, please send me what you're working on each day so that I know where I need to be checking in and where I need to be helping you avoid roadblocks or if things come up, I can be prepared to support you. So I'm lucky to have a team that works fairly independently and knows to ask questions or ask for help when they need it. And I'm going to be able to proactively check in with them. So positioning it as, please help me help you be ahead of these issues and know how I can support you, rather than let me know what you're working on so I can know what you're working on, right? Just for the sake of knowing a reason why you're asking for that information. It's, so that you can support me when a problem comes up, or I can reorient my work, or I can tell leadership what you're working on so that they know that we have this covered, so we can have that proactive and transparent communication internally as well, of if it comes up and I can say, yes, my teammate, my team member is working on that. This is the status of the project. It helps everyone's work be more reflected at the leadership level, and it helps us not duplicate or leave people out of the loop.
Great. So Alicia, going back a little bit to your last point on best practices and being human. So I have a question about your humanness, right? You are a mother and working full time, as so many parents are right now. Talk to us about some of the things that are working, not working, what you've seen either in your own life or, coworkers and other members.
Yeah, and so I've got a slide. Thank you very much to the webinar team who's helping me out here. Yeah, so I think what I've learned over this month of juggling both parenthood and childcare at the exact same time, a couple things that my managers and peers have done to help me. Number one is recognizing that this is a very different situation than a lot of times when parents are working from home. I think, during a regular time, the expectation is often that your employee has a childcare arrangement so that they can be on and be productive. This is different. I mean, your employee's kid cannot go over to their grandparent's house because that grandparent is probably in a high-risk group. Your employee's daycare is probably closed. You just found out yesterday that their school is going to be closed through the end of the year. So this is a very different situation than normal. And so I think about adjusting what is reasonable during this time. I think absolutely you can still set targets for what needs to be accomplished. I think you still can be upfront about the fact, this is the work that needs to get done. I think you're also going to have to accept they're not going to be available to you every minute of the 8 hours that they are when they're in the office and they have childcare. Yeah. And then the second point I would say is, and our team has been so great about this, if you are a parent too, normalize it. It makes me feel so much less awkward about my kiddo popping into the frame of a video conference when I know that the same thing happened to my boss, when I know the same thing happened to my peers. So I think that's definitely
it
something.
Happens. We're just, it's part of life right now, right?
Yep. And then I would say that if you're a parent and you're thinking about employee engagement as a parent, number one, I would say communicate. So like we were just talking about, be upfront about when, if you and your partner are splitting focus time, which is what my partner and I do, make sure that people know, hey, I'm going to be on kid duty from 8:30 to 9:30 when my partner is teaching their remote class. So I think then you can really set expectations with the team, right? And along with that, communicate too if you are going to be flexing your hours. So maybe you're going to be checking your email before your kid wakes up. So you're going to be responding to emails at 6 in the morning. Be very clear with your team, you don't want them checking their email at 6 in the morning and responding to you. You are doing this so that they have what they need when they start their workday, because you might be on kid duty then, or if you're emailing late at night, which is, more of my schedule. I'm not a morning person. And then my last piece of advice, if you're a parent and you're thinking about employee engagement with everyone, is respect that these are hard times for everyone in different ways. I think definitely parenthood is a challenge during this time. I think many of us are wearing 3 hats now at the same time. So parent, teacher, and worker. And as Jane mentioned, at the same time, there's other folks on our teams that are going through things that are very tough. I think it would be very hard for me not to come in contact with another human, except for once a week at the grocery store when I'm wearing my mask. So think about the fact that other people are facing challenges too, and whether that is a person who cannot check in on their elderly parent because they're trying to keep that person safe, whether it's someone that had to cancel a vacation that they were waiting to take for a really long time. There are a lot of disappointments and challenges and juggling that we're all going through. So as you think about trying to meet people's needs and keep them engaged, remember that parents are not the only folks that are facing a challenge.
That's a great reminder. So one of the things in our poll question at the beginning was around the employee wellness and personal wellness and health. Jane, I'd love to hear from you what resources that employers could provide employees around wellness in this time of uncertainty. You know, there are lots of disappointments. There's a lot of things personally that people are dealing with that then also affect their work and affect them in their personal lives.
Yeah, it'll be important for each organization to kind of reach out to their benefits administrator or their HR professional to see what their plans provide and what's covered in terms of benefits already provided. Again, it goes to kind of normalizing. So I share with my team that I see a counselor every other week, and I make that a normal part of conversation. I'll be like, everyone knows from 5 to 6 on Mondays, I have that appointment, and I don't have travel time now, which is great. I don't have to leave at 4:30 to make it there by 5. But just encouraging people to talk about those things. And I've noticed that employees have, when you ask people how they are and you make that dedicated space, they really tell you a lot, and people want to talk about that and they want to have that connection. And so I think there are resources externally, and so when you're having those conversations and checking in, it may start to get to the territory of like, wow, that, you know, let's get you support and let's find time where you can step away from, you know, the office, and making it okay to seek out those resources during the workday, and not just saying, you know, well, you're going to have to deal with that on your own time. Making it normal for an employee to have a blocked off private appointment where, you know, maybe that's with a mental health provider. Maybe that's where they, you know, get outside and walk for an hour, or, you know, do meditation, and making that okay, because I guarantee you that hour that they spend doing that will lead to much higher productivity in the other hours that they're working. And so, you know, it's hard to say. There are so many resources, and it can feel really overwhelming to try to be the one that knows everything that's out there. And if an employee is sharing with you a challenge they're having, even just saying, let's work together to find a resource that will work for you, right? And making it okay and being a partner. I don't think employees expect us to have all the answers. I think they expect us as leaders and managers to help them and support them while they find the answers to their own questions and their own problems. But walking beside them in that is what's going to help them be able to sort through all of the resources and know that it's okay to do that. So I think it's, you know, I'm definitely not the expert as to all of the available resources out there. And, you know, lean into your benefits administrator, ask them, say what, you know, handouts or what flyers or what's available to my employees and how do they access it, and then start distributing that as applicable, and supporting people in finding other options.
Yeah, from the health insurance perspective, so I run the health insurance trust and programs that supports all the chamber members, and we have about 850 member companies. So I would encourage people to reach out to their health insurance, even just look on the website if you're with Premera or Regents, United, Kaiser, etc. A lot of resources are being made available right now for virtual visits, and those sorts of resources just built into plans. And a lot of times there's not even copays. So encouraging employees to utilize that during this time. This is the time where they won't have travel time, right? They have time to actually take care of themselves a little bit and hopefully be able to sort through some of the things that are really big disappointments or big losses that people might be feeling in this time. So based on today's conversation, you know, I'd love to just open up a question to all of our participants who are listening in on what area of engagement do you personally see or plan to implement or try in your organization? We would love to hear from you. So you can use the chat panel and share with us, or you can, you know, just write it down for yourselves. We really want this webinar to be something that, you know, folks can take something away. Say, you know what, I think I will implement this or communicate in this way. So please share with us as we end the webinar. We will stay online so that we can be reading kind of those takeaways from all of you. I also wanted to let everyone know that we will have 2 additional webinars this week. Tomorrow we will be, we have one, and on Thursday. So please check out the Chamber events page and register for that. All of the slides and the recording will be made available on the Chamber events page tomorrow. So if you wanted to revisit something or share this presentation with another coworker or another organization, please do so. Thank you all, and take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow.